All right, we are live. Just making sure everything is all good. Let's see. All right, I think we are good. I think everything is live and online. Uh, and yeah, let's get started. It's 6 o'clock on August 1st, 2025. It is the first day of August. We are now in month 3 of the Atlantic hurricane season. And on tonight's live stream, I'm going to go over everything you need to know from now till the rest of the hurricane season, which ends on November 30th. Hard to believe we are already 2 months done already with the season. So that's roughly 60 days already completed for this hurricane season. And we had a few stuff. It wasn't completely like absolutely nothing happened. But obviously there could have been more, but I'm going to go over that we are probably going to get a lot more from this hurricane season in just a bit. I'm going to go over what we had so far and what could we expect over the next few months, including over the next few weeks, because now we are entering the month of August, and you know things are starting to get very active in the Atlantic, or they will start to get very active. And it'll happen very quickly. We know that the climatological ramp up to the peak of the hurricane season happens around August 20th, and from there, the lid pretty much comes off. People like to say it's a lid that comes off, or a light switch that flips, and things go from 0 to 100 very quickly. And I'm going to show you today or tonight model guidance right now, especially as we head into the next week or so, especially as we get towards week 2 of August. Really begin, especially today, models have really begun to light up within the week to 10 day, especially up to 15 days out, which is a little bit of a it's a long shot, but the bottom line is as we start progressing into this month, the signals are there that things are going to start becoming more and more active. So we're going to go over all those models, and we're also going to go over hurricane predictions, which I have updated my hurricane forecast. Which, if you remember, I did a hurricane forecast back in June, on the first day of the hurricane season, June 1st. I released a forecast then for the Atlantic and the Pacific, and tonight I'm going to be releasing my updated forecast for both the Atlantic and the Pacific, bearing in mind everything that has happened so far. So, with that being said, let's get started by taking a look at everything we have going on right now. And on this first day of August, first day of the peak month, or month 1 of the peak of the hurricane season, because the peak is August, September, October, those 3 months. First day of August, nothing is happening in the Atlantic right now. Tropical cyclone activity is not expected during the next 7 days. You're probably well aware all of the activity is currently present in the Pacific. We have Tropical Storm Iona, which was a major hurricane just a few days ago, became a pretty powerful major hurricane, made it to high-end Category 3 status. A lot of people actually say in the hurricane blogosphere say that it did actually make it to Category 4 status. Just the National Hurricane Center was a little bit conservative, though, on its peak intensity, but still became a major hurricane. And it was also kind of rare for the fact that it became a major hurricane in the Central Pacific, not only becoming a major hurricane, but forming in the Central Pacific in July. That is a pretty rare feat and definitely doesn't happen in a year, especially like this is, in which we have a cooler ENSO. I'm going to go over all those things a little bit later on, but I mean, the Pacific, though, as I'll show you in a little bit, has definitely been very active so far this season, much more active compared to what expectations have had it. And it's continuing right now. We have Iona, we have newly formed Tropical Storm Gil. This is actually literally on the verge of becoming a hurricane, and it probably will do so, become a hurricane briefly. And then we have another area of interest here with a high chance of development over the next week. And then we have yet another area of interest right off the coast of Mexico, although I don't think this will probably bring impacts to Mexico if it does develop. But activity, we're still in an active phase here in the Pacific, and that's probably going to remain the case for the near future. And as I've been saying for the past several days, when all is said and done, beyond Gil, I would not be surprised if we still get another 2 or so named storms here in the Pacific, and then eventually our focus will have to shift into the Atlantic. Here's a satellite image of what is going on in the Pacific right now, and you can see it's active, lots of convective activity because of the MJO that is moving through, which is allowing for a rising motion in the atmosphere, and as a result, lots of convective activity and lots of thunderstorms are able to form. And of course, we have Tropical Storm Gil here in the Eastern Pacific. I'll zoom in on it a little bit, and you can see definitely has a developed structure, but this is beginning to move to the west-northwest, and to the northwest is drier air, colder sea surface temperatures, and at least looking at the satellite picture, it seems like some of that dry air has already kind of entrenched itself into Gil a little bit, because it was, I think, already supposed to be a hurricane by now, at least from the National Hurricane Center track from yesterday or a few days ago when it first formed, but it kind of has underperformed slightly. But it's almost there. It's almost a hurricane. It's at 70 miles per hour. And the National Hurricane Center still expect that it'll probably briefly become a hurricane within the next few hours, before it'll probably begin to weaken as we head into the weekend. And by Sunday afternoon, the National Hurricane Center expects that this will probably degenerate and no longer be a tropical system. And I say that because you do notice that the track kind of bends back a little bit towards the west, although it stays pretty far north of Hawaii. But even by then, it's going to be a shell of what it is right now. It's probably not even going to be a tropical system or anything close to it at all by the time it gets close to Hawaii. So no need to worry about threats or impacts from Gil when it comes to that. And in the Pacific as a whole, I think there's really no need to worry about impacts as well from anything, even though we will have a lot of activity in the Pacific, and I'll show you the models for all of that in just a little bit. Here's a satellite image of the Atlantic. And what can I say? There's really not much anything happening right now, except this front that is off the East Coast here, or it's a frontal system that's coming off the East Coast, producing lots of showers and thunderstorms across the South right now, as you can very clearly see. And this is actually an area that we will need to watch over the next week or so, because there are some model signals off the East Coast that we might get some sort of spin up here. Especially the GFS from today having something spin up off the East Coast, actually very close to the Carolinas. So we'll see if something does actually try to develop, and we're still kind of like August, still somewhat in the early season kind of pattern, but we're also beginning to transition to the peak season, because we obviously have a lot more waves coming off the coast of Africa right now as we head into August, but obviously, at least at the moment, you can see things are not very favorable at all. Lots of dry air, mid-level dry air, especially throughout the entire Atlantic, but Saharan air is still an issue right now, and still keeping a lid on these waves, especially as they come off. They kind of are still feeling the effects of the drier atmosphere this early on in the year, so obviously the waves are not aggressive now, but we are starting to get a lot more of them, and a few of them are starting to become more aggressive, especially this wave here, which is now right near the northern islands. This was a few days ago a very aggressive wave that was coming off the coast of Africa. Everyone was talking about it. And if you remember about a week ago, the model signals were actually very aggressive on this potentially developing, but obviously that's not the case at all. And for now, things continue to remain quiet in the Atlantic. So let's take a look at what we've had in the Atlantic hurricane season so far for the year, for the season of 2025. We've had so far a total of three systems, three tropical storms. We've had up to Chantal, and three depressions, of course, but they all became tropical storms. So we've had three systems so far. No hurricanes or major hurricanes, though, and that's actually quite interesting because very, very often, at least over the last several years, we would at least have a hurricane or so develop by the time we get to August. At least one hurricane would form in July. We had that last year with Hurricane Beryl, which was a major hurricane in a Category 5. And even the year before that too, in 2023, and years like 2021, and just naming years that I can remember recently off the top of my head. Most years recently have actually had a hurricane in July, so it's very interesting that this year we've not had it, but quite an impactful one. Especially remember Tropical Storm Chantal, and I'll actually show you the track map of the season so far. We had Andrea, which was the very quick spin up here in the subtropics, if you remember that. Especially it was the last week of June, I believe, and it was almost looking like June would go completely without a single named storm. Yet we had Andrea, and then very shortly after we had Barry, which was a very disorganized storm, to say the least, in the Bay of Campeche, and that brought impacts to Mexico. And then obviously at the beginning of last month, hard to believe now already saying last month, since we are no longer in July, but the beginning of last month, July, pretty much right around the July 4th holiday weekend, we had Tropical Storm Chantal, made landfall in South Carolina, I believe, and then brought lots of heavy rain to North Carolina as well. And last month we actually had quite a bit in the way of very huge flooding events. Some of them tropical related, some of them not. And that just goes to show once again, with the flooding, we've had a lot of very big flood events recently. And they can really occur whenever. We don't need a strong hurricane to bring lots of flooding and lots of rain and lots of storm surge, and even that gets kind of underplayed. But these flooding events are really nuisances, and I think especially how many big flooding events we had last month, I think is a huge wake up call for a lot of people to start paying attention to these flooding events, or hopefully it is. I mean, it has to be at some point a wake up call for people to start paying attention more closely to these major flood events, especially when they are forecast, because a lot of them are forecast, but people just don't heed the warnings. And hopefully they will start heeding the warnings more closely, especially as we head into the peak of the hurricane season and we start getting a lot more activity, and probably as well a lot of impacts in the United States. So we already had one in July. We had Chantal, and that was also so far the strongest storm of the season, 60 miles per hour and 1,002 millibars. And then conversely in the Pacific, very active start to the Pacific so far. So far in the first 2 months, a whopping 9 storms have formed. 4 hurricanes, 3 majors, one of them, of course, being Hurricane Eric, which was a powerful major hurricane making landfall in Mexico in mid-June, if you can believe it. And June was actually, in and of itself, a very, very active month. And it's very surprising, especially because a lot of people were not expecting the Pacific to be very active, yet it was, and it's going to continue to remain active. Right now, in fact, right now it's still very active, and it's probably going to continue to remain so over the next week. And obviously, we had Hurricane Iona, which was a major hurricane in the Pacific, and now we are up to Gil in the Eastern Pacific list. So we had 2 storms in the Central Pacific. So obviously, that leads to a total of 9 storms so far. 25 fatalities, so pretty impactful season, especially because of Hurricane Eric, which was a powerful hurricane making landfall once again in Mexico in the month of June, if you can believe it. And I also think that that in the Pacific we also did have, especially with Flossie, the quickest we got to 6 named storms in the Pacific on record, because we had 6 storms before July, and I think that's the most amount of storms we've had before the month of July in the Pacific on record. So very active start to the Pacific. Kind of had a lull in the month of July, as both the Atlantic and the Pacific did. It looked for a little bit that the Atlantic was going to try to get active as we went into mid-July, but that did not pan out. But that's probably going to change very soon, as I'll show you in a little bit. So, with that being said, shows you what's going on now, or what's happened so far. Throughout the hurricane season in both the Atlantic and the Pacific. So, what do I expect from this moment onward? Now that we are now up to August, what are my current predictions now for August for the hurricane season? And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I present you my August 2025 hurricane season forecast. Starting off in the Atlantic, I am predicting 16 to 19 named storms as of my August forecast. 6 to 9 hurricanes, and 3 to 5 major hurricanes with a total ACE of anywhere between 130 to 180, and 4 to 7 United States landfalls. And impact-wise, because I also like to forecast impacts, and I know some people tend to advise against it, but I think you could still do these forecasts. And bearing in mind what has happened so far, back in June, I highlighted a high-risk area for the Carolinas, and given that we've had a lot of activity to occur in the Carolinas, especially with Chantal in July, I've kind of expanded my high-risk area for the Carolinas now. They're probably going to get more activity as we head into the peak of the hurricane season. In fact, I would not be surprised if we actually get a pretty decent landfall, stronger than Chantal, to occur in the Carolinas sometime maybe this month or even next month, but probably would happen this month. And then throughout the Caribbean, lots of activity I expect in the Caribbean, especially the Northern Islands. This kind of year, especially a second year La Nina, or a second year removed from El Nino. Just the general setup of this year seems to really indicate a lot more northerly tracking storms, as opposed to last year, where we had storms like Beryl, which traversed the entire Caribbean. And last year was very active in the Caribbean, especially in the late season. And we'll probably still get some activity in the Caribbean, especially storms that form in the Western Caribbean. I think we will see more of those. Maybe some this month. Maybe we'll get a strong storm that forms in the Caribbean around the middle to latter portion of the month, and ends up coming into the Gulf of Mexico and becomes a very strong storm in late August. That would not shock me, and I obviously think probably we will get that, and because of that, I think we'll probably have a very impactful storm in the Gulf, so I have a high risk for them. Bay of Campeche, also, I also have a high risk too, because we had Barry there, and I think especially with activity that we're probably going to get soon, I think maybe we might see something else in the Bay of Campeche as well, and Bermuda, and obviously here along Atlantic Canada. They've also been getting a lot of stuff in recent years, and I think they're probably going to get something else this year. And New England too. I think they might have a moderate risk for potentially getting something, because this year really seems to be a year where we kind of have a lot more tracks in the Northern Caribbean and the Southwestern Atlantic. Maybe we might get something that gets close to Atlantic Canada and the Northeast in New England. So I have a moderate risk for them, and of course a moderate risk for Bermuda. So that is my landfall impact forecasts for the 2025 season. And also, before I move on to the Pacific, I also added a track here. If you go back to my June forecast, I did not have a track here off the East Coast. But I think we'll probably get a track of something that forms off the East Coast and then moves off to the Northeast. And in fact, as I'll show you with the model guidance in a little bit, we're probably going to get something like that pretty soon. Here's my August forecast for the Pacific, and this was a pretty major uptick. And honestly, probably I still lowballed this forecast for the Pacific because I don't think anybody expected the Pacific to be as active as it was so far. So I'm probably still lowballing it, but here's my forecast now for the Pacific season: 15 to 19 storms, 8 to 11 hurricanes, 5 to 7 major hurricanes, and probably 150 to 180 ACE. So above normal ACE there. And they're probably going to continue to remain active, at least for the short-term future. We'll see if that remains the case, especially as we head into September. They'll probably quiet down a little bit, especially as the Atlantic gets more active. But I think, especially because of how active the early season has been in the Pacific, I think that's really bumped up their numbers quite a bit. And because of that, we are going to have an above normal season after all in the Pacific. So I have that. And landfall wise, probably going to get a few landfalls in Mexico, especially here along the central Mexican coast and near the Baja, where they typically get it. And because of the activity we've had in the Central Pacific over the last week or so, I've kind of now added a risk area for Hawaii, because I do think that potentially maybe something might form sometime soon. Not saying that there is anything actually being forecasted right now, but maybe if we do get another Central Pacific storm, maybe that might be something of interest for Hawaii. So I am adding a risk area or a higher risk area for there, because my June forecast, I only had a low risk for Hawaii. Now I think it's maybe more like a moderate, since it seems like the Central Pacific has also been more active as well. But Mexico, generally, probably going to get a few more landfalls as we typically would see. Especially as we head into September and October. That's when they really get a lot of landfalls in Mexico. And hopefully we don't get it, especially because we had a storm like Eric, which was very impactful for Mexico, especially in the state here. Forgot the name of it. I think it's Oaxaca. No, it's actually, this is Oaxaca. Forgot the state name, but it's the state where Acapulco is. And I think Eric made landfall around that area. So pretty much very close to the area that Hurricane John last year, and obviously, if you remember, Otis 2 years ago made landfall. So they didn't catch a break. And that happened in June. And we still have a few more months of the season left. So they're probably going to get some more impacts here in Mexico. So that is my forecast. My updated forecast for the hurricane season in the Atlantic and the Pacific. Now let's go over why I believe what I believe. What is the thought behind my forecast? Well, at least in terms of the Atlantic, it's very obvious as to why I forecast an above normal season for the Atlantic, especially compared to a lot of people that I've been seeing that still think that this hurricane season will not be above normal. I don't know why, but I think this hurricane season will be above normal. In fact, I'm actually going to really quickly bring up the NOAA Coral Reef Watch for you, and I'm actually going to show you how things look like back on June 1st in the Atlantic. And let me really quickly do a comparison for you. So here's how the Atlantic looked like on June 1st when I still forecasted an above normal season then. And obviously, the Atlantic was generally above normal, but a lot of the warmth was especially concentrated in the Caribbean and Gulf, and especially this part out here in the Eastern Atlantic. We had a lot of these cooler anomalies, and especially on certain maps, these cooler anomalies really were much more pronounced, and a lot of people were noting just how cooler the Atlantic was in June, especially compared to last year. But the problem with that is that last year was so warm. I just don't really think you could really compare. I don't think it's really a fair comparison to compare this year compared to last year. But still, either way, this is how it looked like on June 1st, and now this is how it looks like pretty much as we head into the month of August. Quite a significant uptrend, especially here in the Eastern Atlantic, especially throughout the MDR. And the warmth has mostly retained itself, especially in the Gulf and the Caribbean. But I think the biggest highlighting areas of where the warmth has really sustained itself and really warmed up is in the Eastern Atlantic, especially here just off the northwestern coast of Africa, near the Canary Islands, and in general, just throughout the Eastern MDR, pretty significant warm up occurring. Combined with the fact that we have a cooler ENSO out here in the Pacific, not quite La Nina, although I think the chances there that we might still reach a weak La Nina as we head into the winter. But we generally have a cooler ENSO here. We have a cool neutral and a negative PDO, as you could especially see with these cooler anomalies here off the Baja Peninsula. So the Pacific is generally cooler, although except for this part here close to Mexico. That's definitely above normal, and I guess this was fueling a lot of the activity in the Eastern Pacific. But overall, the Pacific is cooler compared to the Atlantic, which is warmer, and the Atlantic has warmed up a lot, especially in recent weeks, and I'll show you that here with the sea surface temperature anomalies in the Eastern Atlantic. And just look at how much we've warmed up, especially compared to early June. Just look at where we were late May, early June, and just look at where we are now. Definitely a ways warmer. Quite a significant warming trend that we've seen in the Atlantic here in the MDR versus the Nino 3.4, the ENSO. We were obviously kind of somewhat ENSO neutral. We were kind of cool neutral. Then we warmed up a little bit actually last month and the month before that in June, but especially since July and now that we're heading into August, the ENSO region, the Nino 3.4, has cooled down quite a bit, and we're probably going to stay generally in cool neutral territory throughout the rest of the hurricane season, I would imagine. And again, would not be shocked if we get a La Nina potentially as we head into the fall or winter. And we'll probably only see a weak La Nina because not really much there for a very strong La Nina, but we are not in an El Nino, and as I always say, that's really the most important thing, is that we are not in an El Nino, because these cool neutral seasons, ENSO neutral, honestly, there's really not much of a difference, really, for at least Atlantic conditions between ENSO neutral and La Nina. So the fact that we don't have an El Nino, good enough, and will probably keep things very favorable in the Atlantic. And then this is the most important part, is the Atlantic MDR minus the global tropics. And especially in early June and late May, a lot of people were pointing out that compared to the rest of the tropics, the Atlantic was cooler than normal. And because of that, that would have an inhibiting factor on the hurricane season. But look at, especially since July, even that is warmed up, and now the Atlantic in general is warmer compared to the rest of the global tropics. So that's just an interesting fact, especially because I see a lot of people bring that up. What about the Atlantic compared to the rest of the global tropics? Well, that too has warmed up. And here's the picture as we head into the peak of the hurricane season. And I'm not going to bring up the precipitation anomalies because I honestly, I kind of think that those are useless. I'm just going to show what the general setup is, and kind of remains the same. We have a warm Atlantic here versus a cooler, in general, Pacific. We have a negative PDO setup here with a cooler ENSO. And again, it's just Atlantic is warmer than the Pacific, and obviously that always tips in favor of the Atlantic. And that's the CANTIPS model, which was actually updated yesterday for today for the month of August. So this is the latest August CANTIPS run. And then here is the Nino 3.4 sea surface temperature anomalies from the CFS. And this is also as of August 1st. And they also show cooler ENSO. So pretty much as we head into the peak of the hurricane season, we're going to have cooler ENSO, no sign of El Nino, and I think that is that. So just give me a second. I'll be back. But cooler ENSO, what can I tell you? But I'll be back. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section. I also forgot to mention that. If you want to have any questions, shoot them in the comments. I have the comments open right now. So if you have any questions, leave them there. I'm going to take a few minutes of a break, but I'll be right back. So stay tuned. All right, we are back. And so where did I leave off? Oh, with the sea surface temperature anomalies and the CFS. So they show cool neutral just like the CANSIP does. So we're going to remain in cool neutral for pretty much the rest of the year. And I don't think there's really no deviation from that anymore at this point. Definitely no chance for an El Nino, so we could rule that out. So, with that being said, that's why I think we'll probably have an active hurricane season. I mean, just warmer anomalies in the Atlantic. And I really have a hard time believing, because I know that there are some people that say that the Atlantic is warming up very decently, but it's a little too late to impact the overall base state, the atmospheric base state. I have a little bit of a hard time believing that. I just think the way that we've warmed up, especially with how significant it has been, I think there will be some sort of impact. And just given the fact that we're going to have a cooler ENSO, I think that we're probably going to be in for an active peak of the hurricane season. So now that takes us to what is the forecast, at least what to expect specifically in the next few weeks here. And I'm going to show you off starting with the ACE forecast by the Euro. This is the weekly Euro forecast for ACE. And I just want to show you how things get more active, especially over the next few weeks. So this is the week of August 4th to August 11th. And the Euro generally has a near normal ACE forecasted for this week. But then this is for the third week of August, August 11th to August 18th. And notice that activity begins to ramp up here in the Atlantic. We go to 1.5 ACE, and so that's above normal. Here's the August 18th to 25th, so this is getting into the last third of August, and we are now at 1.8. So, and this is August 18th to 25th. We're now starting to get into the August 20th time frame, and we know August 20th is the first day of the peak of the hurricane season, so quite a bit of activity that then ramps up there. And now we are in the last week of August, August 25th to September 1st, and we are above normal in the ACE forecast on the Euro. So there's one model that shows quite a bit of ramp up in activity here, and it just gets progressively more active as we head into the month of August. And why is this going to happen? Well, here's one part of it, the velocity potential anomalies, and this is what's really contributed to a lot of the activity that we've seen in the Pacific so far. We had very positive, positive as in favorable velocity potential anomalies in the Pacific recently, as you could especially see here. A lot of these greens and even some of these blues here, especially in the Central Pacific too, which is what helped obviously with the development that we see in the Central Pacific recently with Hurricane Iona. And now that is going to move into the Atlantic. So this is all part of the MJO, and all of these greens, these rising motion anomalies in the Pacific, are going to start to move into the Atlantic, as you can see, especially within the first week of August. And that's going to help start priming the atmosphere for things to become more favorable. And as a result, here are the anomalies. This is the 12Z, not the anomalies, the ensembles. And this is the 12Z Euro. And this is actually the first time I'm really seeing the 12Z Euro. But notice, especially as we head into the 7 to 10 day time frame here in the Euro, especially in the longer range portion, notice just how much activity we start seeing occur in the MDR. And also within the next week or so, there's also a very strong signal here on the Euro for activity off the southeast coast. And where is it? Really quickly here too, you also see we have activity in the Western Gulf, which is also hinted at if you look at the GEFS ensemble. So I'm showing you both the GEFS and the Euro ensembles, and both of them have quite a bit of activity, especially as we get into roughly the week to 10 day time frame. Just notice how much activity we start getting here in the MDR. And multiple of these ensembles that actually indicate potential long track activity. Not sure we're actually going to get that, but you see here, both the Euro and the GFS have quite the uptick in activity, especially as we progress further into August. And they also both have the activity off the southeast coast, especially as we head into next week. So with the National Hurricane Center not having much on the tropical weather bulletin now, wouldn't actually surprise me if they add an area of interest here off the East Coast within the next few days or so, especially if these model signals continue. And even as we head into early August, and wow, is that siren loud? Really hope it doesn't interrupt me here. Probably is, but whatever. But even as we head into early August, we start getting a lot of activity here off the southeast coast as well. I mean, that's typically where we see a lot of development in the early season, but it also occurs quite a bit in August too. So we still have that as an area to watch, and there's definitely a signal there, especially in the short term. So we'll have to see if that does develop and actually become anything. But now I'll show you what the actual models are showing, because I showed you the ensembles. What about the operational models? And I'll start here with the GFS, and I'll take it out into the next week. And you could see something does develop here off the East Coast, and actually becomes quite a interesting looking tropical system here, especially off the Carolinas coast. And you can't take this verbatim because this is hour 168, so this is a week out, and obviously a lot could change, but I just showed you both of the ensembles have quite a bit of activity here that occurs off the southeast coast. And at least on the 12Z GFS here, this is the 12Z GFS. I thought it said 18Z earlier, but I guess this is the 12Z run. And we have something that develops here off the East Coast. So that'll be one area that we might need to watch as we progress into the month. So at least in the next week, maybe there might be something that actually tries. And then I want to show you the Euro and what do they show on the 12Z as well. Not really that much that happens, although there's actually a pretty interesting wave here that occurs. And this actually goes well beyond a week out, and that actually seems to develop. And then look, as we head into the middle part of next month, this is now really stretching it, because this is now 15 days out. But even then, on the Euro, they're starting to pick up at the more favorable conditions that we'll probably start seeing as we head into mid-August. And as you can see on the 12Z, they have something that develops here 360 hours out. So I would pay absolutely no attention to this model in terms of the specifics, and is there going to be something that develops and heads towards the islands as we head into mid-August. I would not pay attention to that specifically, but I'm showing this to show you that the models are seemingly picking up on what I've showed you just now, that conditions are going to get favorable, especially as we progress into this month, and the ensembles are starting to have quite a bit of activity begin to show up here in the deep tropics, especially as we head into August. So very interesting that also the Euro operational is picking up on that as well. But in the meanwhile, in the Pacific, that's pretty much where all the activity is going to be, at least for the meantime. And I'll show you here in the Pacific, we have a lot of activity. We have Tropical Storm Gil, which develops and probably becomes a hurricane, or maybe becomes a hurricane, although a brief one, and then that moves out of the way. And then we have something else that develops here, and then something else that develops. And then maybe, finally, as we go a little bit beyond the 10-day time frame, things begin to quiet down in the Pacific. And then you could already see here we have something develop here beyond the 10-day time frame in the Atlantic, and the Pacific quiets down in the meanwhile. So probably going to get a few more named storms here in the Pacific, and probably the mainstay of activity, at least in the shorter time frame, will remain to be in the Pacific. But climatology wise, And again, sorry, I have something in my mouth. Give me a minute. All right, there we go. Climatology wise, and I actually went over this in my video from earlier today, and I just showed you. Um, but things really do ramp up very quickly, especially climatologically speaking, as we head into the month of August. We start off the month here, slightly more activity, obviously, than June or July, but we still start off the month of August, and we're kind of stagnant for a little bit in terms of activity. But especially, notice as we get into mid-month, we start to see things ramp up very quickly. And then especially as we get towards the latter third of the month, we get towards the August 20th time frame, that infamous August 20th time frame. Just notice, especially in the latter third of the month, just how quickly things ramp up here in the Atlantic. And then it pretty much ramps up all the way till we get to September. And of course, the official peak day in September is September 10th. So even if things might not be active now, trust me, and I've been saying this a lot over the last several weeks, even if things are not active right now, trust me, they will ramp up very quickly as we head throughout the month of August, and especially as we head towards the end of the month and we get into next month, which is the peak month of September. And then lastly, before I end here, really quickly, just want to show you, kind of show you the progression of how quickly things really begin to ramp up in the Atlantic. I want to show you the climatological maps for the points of origin throughout August. And to start off here with August 1st to 10th, which is now the time frame that we are in already, especially if I compare this map to June, obviously already have a lot more activity here. So, we're now heading into August. Things are already starting to get more active. But just really quickly going to take you to August 11th, and notice already a noticeable increase in activity here from August 11th to 20th, and then August 21st to 31st increases even more. So really quickly, August 1st to 10th, then August 11th to 20th, and then August 21st to 31st. We really begin to fill up very quickly with a lot of these points, especially throughout the Atlantic, and especially by the time we get to August, the last third of the month, these points pretty much fill in just about everywhere. So activity pretty much occurs, especially as we get towards the peak of the season, occurs pretty much about everywhere in the Atlantic. No longer are we constricted to just the Gulf or just off the southeast coast. It occurs everywhere, even in the eastern Atlantic. So things are going to start to ramp up very quickly, and the signs are already there, and it's probably going to happen sooner or later in the Atlantic. It's just a matter of when. But for now, obviously, things probably are remaining quiet. So, with that being said, I'm going to wait a minute more just to see if any comments come in. But if not, we're going to end it off here. So, that is a look at what's next for the season. We've already made it, if you can believe it. First 2 months of the season already done. We are now in month 3. And we are already starting to get into the peak of the season. Unbelievable. Time flies by very quickly, and believe it or not, it's only the beginning. We've only had 3 storms, and we are probably going to get many, many more from here on out. So we're going to continue to be here throughout the rest of the hurricane season. We still got to November 30th. We are only here on August 1st. Might be getting halfway through the season, but it just showed you, climatologically speaking, we still have pretty much most of the season ahead of us. Definitely in terms of our worst storms, we're definitely going to have more of those, except if something really, really, bad happens to the Atlantic and we don't get any major activity from here on out, which that's definitely not going to happen, as I just showed you. But it's only August 1st. We still have a little bit more ways to go. It's only going to start ramping up from here on, and we're going to be here for the rest of the hurricane season, continuing with these daily tropical videos that I've been doing every single day. uploading an outlook, tropical weather outlook for you. Took a little bit of a break last week, or I think it was last week, right? Yeah, it was last week. I took a little bit of a break. It was a much needed break. Stuff happened, but now we're back, and we're going to be here for the rest of the season. So make sure to stay tuned with that. And with that being said, I think I'm going to end it off for tonight, because it doesn't seem like there's really much else to go over, and not getting any comments here asking for any questions if you have. So I guess I'm just going to end it off here. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this live stream, please make sure to give it a like. And if you found this content very interesting, I would really appreciate if you like this video, and also subscribe to my channel as well. Once again, I'm going to be doing these videos every single day, and obviously we'll be doing live streams too, especially if there's any major impacts occurring, especially for the United States, and I'm pretty sure we will probably get that very soon. All right, thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. I'll be back with more tomorrow.